What's good with the YouTube, man? It's your boy Rojo from a convict's perspective. I'm joined by Oakland Latinos United today. And man, we had Gunner in here for a second. I don't know where he went. I'm sure he'll jump back in. But what's up with you, man? How you doing, Mr. Rivera?
Hey, what's up, man? My name's Jose Rivera, Oakland Latinos United. Thank you guys for having me on, Rojo. I've been watching your guys' channel and I like what you guys are doing and the content you're putting out and, some of the more positive aspects of the channel that I've been seeing more lately. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So why don't you tell us, man, how you got this channel started, when you got this channel started, and why you got this channel started? Gunner's back in the house. That's right. So, man, if you want to break it down, man, let us know when you started. What was your motivation to start this channel? I already know. You know what I'm saying? But let's let the fans know, brother.
Oh, that's a long story, brother. But basically, this goes back to the early years of YouTube. And I don't know if you guys were around to see the early years of YouTube, but I always tell people the early years of YouTube were like the wild, wild west. There was like all kinds of stuff on YouTube at that time. And there were no filters like there is today. It wasn't the YouTube we know of today. I've seen different videos of different people. Like there was a lot of African American videos where they would talk about their history, their culture, their community, about interracial dating and different things. And then I would even see white nationalists doing videos like this. So I was like, damn. I said, I wonder if Raza doing this kind of stuff. So I started searching. Nothing, bro. Nothing. There was no Raza on YouTube back then. If I remember right, I found one dude named Nawi, and he was from I believe Orange County, and he was filming like the immigration protest, like the back then there was like a big anti-immigration thing. So he would go and troll the basically the racists that were against immigration. He was one of the few, and I think there was another dude called the Unapologetic Mexican, if I remember right. And
I
he
kind
did
of
a few
remember
videos.
hearing that one before.
Yeah, I remember him doing some videos. I said, damn, there's no raza on YouTube. So me being who I am, there's a longer story to Oakland Latinos United. And if I could go back to that just briefly.
Yeah, knock it out,
So,
man.
so I'm a history person. I love history. I'm a history nerd. And I know a lot about Chicano history and about, Latin American history. And to me, it was I started noticing that when it came to Oakland and even the Bay Area, the history of
Oh no.
different Oakland history books, and it was almost like we didn't exist. It was always a black and white narrative. And a lot of us understand, like, if you know your history, a lot of African Americans came to Oakland during World War II to fill in the war jobs. And there was a great migration from the South. So I started wondering, I mean, Oakland's a California city, and Raza has been here just as long as anybody else. Why isn't our history documented? So I began to document the Chicano Raza history of Oakland. And fast forward to when YouTube came around. Well, before YouTube, I had started the first Oakland Latinos United website was on MySpace, if you remember that era. That was the first time I ever did Oakland Latinos United, and I started putting all the history that I had researched about Oakland's Chicano Raza history. So fast forward to YouTube, I was like, you know what? What if I start doing a video like these black and white nationalists are doing and talking about my own community and about our own issues and our own problems, and it's talking about what's going on in Oakland, because at that time there was a lot going on in Oakland. This is like 2007, so that was like when the hyphy movement and the gang wars between the Norteños and Surenos and Border Brothers, and there was just a lot of shit going on back then. So I said, you know what, like, why don't I just start talking about those things and documenting them? Because there's no raza. I mean, literally, there was no raza. Like today, it makes my head spin when I see how much raza there is on YouTube. It kind of makes me feel proud to know that I was one of the first dudes out there putting this kind of content out there. And I talked about at that time I used to be more political. And at that time, I was a leftist, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I'm a product of my environment. We already know that the Bay Area is very liberal. You probably know that, and I'm sure Gunner probably knows that too. The Bay Area politically is a very liberal place. So I'm a product of my environment. I was very liberal at the time. So I was like, I didn't like conservatives at the time. But then as time passed on, I kind of outgrew that phase. I would say I'm still probably a leftist, but I'm more open-minded, than I used to be. But anyway, my early years of my videos was I was very political. I was talking about immigration issues, and then I was talking about how conservatives were this and that. And then eventually I was kind of scared to do it at first. I didn't want to talk about gang issues, but slowly I started talking about them here and there, about how raza should be united and we shouldn't be fighting each other, and that we've been killing each other on the streets between border brothers, norteños, sureños, and all this war that's been going on in Oakland and the Bay Area. That when can we find some kind of peace or some kind of solution or some kind of respect? See, this is something I always tell people. If you want any kind of unity, whether that be black and brown unity, brown on brown unity, black on black unity, or Sureño Norteño unity, there has to be a mutual common respect. And that was kind of like the bottom line of my videos. There has to be some kind of respect if we're going to get along. And that's kind of what I've been throwing, a positive respect type of platform.
Good stuff, man. And you've been at it. What year did you start your YouTube, my man?
The YouTube started in 2007. And I believe the first video I posted on it was 2008, I believe. But the video, the channel started in 2007.
That's nuts, man. So, man, what you were saying about, when me and you talked in private, man, was, how about Oakland being so rich in African American culture and stuff. Everybody else seems to get overshadowed by that. And that makes sense. Oakland has a huge black population. They got all the rappers, they got all that, et cetera. So it makes sense that they get a lot of the limelight, man. But man, what do you know about, man, that old school, culture? What do you know about that old school growing up, man? I know you're a historian, man. What have you seen in the way that people have developed there in Oakland, man, as far as the culture goes?
You talking about the Chicanos or just in general?
Straight Chicanos.
So for me to answer that question, I kind of got to break down a little bit of the history of Chicanos or raza in Oakland. The first wave of Latinos or Mexicanos to come to Oakland was during the Mexican Revolution. That was in 1910, between 1910 and 1920. A lot of the first wave came to West Oakland. And besides that wave, there was also a wave of Puerto Ricans that came to Oakland from Hawaii, because they had been taken over to Hawaii to work in the sugarcane and in pineapple plantations. So a lot of them, when they came back to the mainland, again, they came to West Oakland. So the first raza community developed in West Oakland. And again, in World War II, you had a large migration of people from Texas, Tejanos, Texans, people from New Mexico, Colorado. And you also had the braceros. That's where my grandfather comes in. My grandfather was a bracero, that was a guest worker program during World War II to bring workers from Mexico to work in the fields, in the shipyards, in the railroads. My grandfather was in the railroad, so he came and worked in West Oakland for a time. So you had this raza community developing in West Oakland, but what happened in the 50s was the original barrio in West Oakland was destroyed because they built the 880 freeway, they built the West Oakland bar station. And also the original black community, which was called the Harlem of the West, where many blacks had established on 7th Street, was destroyed. That whole area was destroyed. So it pushed black and brown people to East Oakland. Especially the raza was pushed into Fruitvale, into Jingletown, Fruitvale, East 7th Street, the Doves, the 30s, the 60s, Funktown. Those were kind of like the areas where raza dominated. And I grew up on East 7th Street. I was born in Oakland, born and raised at Highland Hospital, right in the heart of Oakland. And I was raised from the time I was about 5 years old till I was like 14 on East 7th Street. So those of you, shout out to all the homies from East 7th Street. And I was right there across from a Jingletown. And when I was growing up in Oakland, the Chicano culture was more prominent because in the 60s, the Chicano movement was going on in Oakland strongly, just like the Black Panther movement was going on in the Black neighborhoods. And the Black Panthers and the Chicanos actually worked together, which is what we don't hear about. The Black Panthers set up the first breakfast program for kids, and they helped this group called the Chicano Revolutionary Party set up a free breakfast program in Jingletown and in Fruitvale. So you can see the Chicanos were doing the same thing, very similar to what the Black Panthers were doing. But yet that's not talked about. We had the Brown Berets, the Chicano Revolutionary Party. We had Frente Liberación del Pueblo. We had Teatro Triste and various Chicano organizations that were doing hardcore community work in the Raza communities of Oakland at the time. But yet none of this is documented, bro. So by the 80s, I got to see the tail ends of that movement, and I started seeing the crack era and the gangster era come in. So when I was a kid, I would hear a lot about the Chicano movement and Chicano power. I would hear about those things. And I remember the Chicanos in Oakland were more into the Chicano style. It was more like Ben Davis, Dickies, you know what I mean? Lowriders and you know, homies with brochas and, you know, the whole cholo thing. And you could even see how the old Chicanos in Oakland were. If you watch the documentary Children of Violence from 1982, it's about the Parkin family in East Oakland. Or if you watch the movie The Principal, which was filmed in 1987 in North Oakland, all the cholos on there, the extras, were real homies from 38, 36 locals and 41st cycles. But as time developed, I think Chicanos got more into the urban thing in Oakland. And you started seeing a change, especially I would say in the late 90s and all the way into the hyphy era is when you started seeing instead of Dickies, they were wearing FUBU. Instead of, you know, like Pendletons, they were wearing long white tees, and you start seeing gold grill, long hair. I would say the only thing that Chicanos, even in the 80s and 90s, we were always saying blood and using some black slang words because we grew up around blacks, you know? But I would say there was always been a strong Chicano culture and presence in Oakland. Whether people like it or want to accept it or not, it is what it is. That's a fact.
Hey, I got a question, man. What is the oldest established barrio in Oakland, bro? What would you say?
As far as gangs, or you mean neighborhoods?
Well, first, it's obviously going to be neighborhoods, man. So what would be the oldest established neighborhood?
Well, the oldest barrio in Oakland doesn't exist anymore. It was in West Oakland. But I would say as far as East Oakland goes, I would say probably Jingletown and probably East 15, 15, probably the 60s, and the area around Fruitvale and East 14, the dirty 30s, as we call it. I would say those are the oldest, like, Chicano areas that I could think of.
All right. As far as gangs go, what's the oldest established gang out there? As far as
I'm taking it back to the 40s, brother. I've been trying to research what the oldest Chicano gang in Oakland was, and the only thing I could find, and there were Pachucos in Oakland, because I made a video about the history of Pachucos in Oakland, and they did have gangs, but the only documented newspaper clipping of a gang in Oakland that I could find was from 1943, and it was called the 23rd Ave Gang in East Oakland. And actually, that's a precursor of East 15, 23rd Ave, because today 15 or East 15, they also claim 23rd Ave. So as far as I know, that's the oldest. They were called the 23rd Ave gangs or the 23rd Ave boys, something like that. And they were a Pachuco gang made up of Portuguese and Chicanos, because back then the Fruitvale area was mostly Portuguese. And that's the first documented gang that I have been able to find in Oakland. And that's a fact. And I have paperwork.
As far as in the modern era, who would you say? Because I've always heard 38th was around the longest.
That's debatable. I would say the 60s are old. 38 is pretty old. East 15th is pretty old. And Jingletown, I would say those are the oldest for sure.
When did you start see the influx of Surenos in Oakland?
Well, that's the thing. There had always been like Paisa gangs in Oakland, but they weren't Surenos. Like when I was a kid, I remember there was a gang called Mojado Power, hearing about them. and there was another gang called Wino Park, and they were like Mexicanos, or what we stereotypically call paisas, you know, Mexican nationals.
Right.
Those were the first gangs that I remember. And then my brother told me he remembers meeting like dudes from LA in Oakland, but they were kind of on the under. The first time I ever heard of anything that wasn't, because look, this is the thing that I always tell people. When I was a kid, because my brother was from 36 Locals, that was his hood. He kicked it with all the homies from 36, and he knew everyone from 38. And from what I remember in the old days, it wasn't about North and Sud. It was about hoods and barrios. So it was like the 60s, 38, 36, 41st cycles, Wino Park, Quince. That's kind of what you used to hear about. 96 Locals, the old school 96. And that's kind of what you used to hear about. I don't remember really hearing about Norte or Norteños. Like, I don't remember my brothers ever talking about that. They would always just talk about their hood. And yeah, I didn't start hearing about Norte and all that until like 89, 90. I started hearing about Norteños. I was like, what the hell's Norteños? I didn't know what that was, bro. And then next thing you know, I started hearing about Border Brothers. And I was like, Border Brothers? Like, that was about 89, 90, 91. I started hearing about the Border Brothers. And then next thing you know, there's this war in Oakland between the Border Brothers and the and the older barrios, which had now affiliated as Norteños. The first time I really ever heard of a Sureno gang in Oakland, I want to say it was late 90s, like 98, 99. I started hearing about SSL, Southside Locals, and I was hearing about them mostly like around, I guess, the 50s, like 57, 51st, 53rd, like in those areas. But that's the only time I really ever heard about Sureños. As far as I know, they never had a huge presence in Oakland, but I would say the Norteños and Border Brothers were the larger presence that at least me growing up, seeing.
Hey, how was that the Northern versus Border Brother war been playing out lately, man? Is it squashed? Is it still popping off? Is it calmed down?
I'm gonna keep it real, bro. I mean, I'm out of the loop, bro. I'm hella old. I don't really associate with people like that no more. As far as I know, I don't think there's really a war on the streets between Border Brothers and Norteños that I know of. You know what I mean? I know it was pretty bad between the 2000s and 2010. It was really bad. But as far as I know, I don't know that there's any drama out there. As far as I know, but I could be wrong.
Gunner, you got any questions for the man?
Absolutely. You know, I do. First and foremost, I want to say, man, it's a pleasure meeting you, brother.
Gracias.
Yeah. I've been watching your channel for quite a time and seeing what you got going on. And man, I really appreciate the clecha and the history. You know, there's not a lot of people who are history buffs, especially in the Bay Area out there in Oakland. You know, Oakland is predominantly looked at as a very urban community. But you know as well as I do that the Chicano history, just like you said, has played an intricate part into the history of the people. One of my sayings is for the people, by the people, and I think you have the same common belief. We got to do it for ourselves because ain't no one going to do it for us. So I have some questions.
Sure.
And I know you're a historian buff and you take it back, but I have some questions. Maybe you could touch on more towards the modern era. So how does it look right now with things that are going on with all this peace treaty stuff going on as far as gangs? I know you're out of the gang loop, but how do you think that's having an impact on your community? Do you see it touching on your community yet, or is it just predominantly in the penitentiaries and prisons right now? Have you seen anything as far as like on YouTube, Raza United, as far as like look at trip out on the boxing match that's going to happen, things like that? What are you starting to notice with the interaction between North and South? Isn't it a trip now? I take it as it's a trip, you know, something I'm not used to. So how are you looking at it?
I think it's a beautiful thing, bro, what I'm starting to see. I mean, I run into some old homies in Oakland, some homies from East 7th Street, some homies from the 30s, and they're not tripping off that stuff as much anymore as they used to. Maybe they're just older now. As far as what I see on YouTube, I think I seen Gold Toes kicking it with some dudes in SoCal, and it's like, and then the boxing match with you and Cholo Trucker, and which I want to commend you guys for doing that, man. As someone who's worked in the community and has tried hard to make the youngsters understand that this stuff is just crazy and it's gonna kill us. I commend you guys for doing what you do, because I in my lifetime never thought I would see something like that. Two Chicanos, two Raza putting their differences to the side and having something positive like this. Maybe I wouldn't agree too much on a boxing match, but hey, whatever works, works.
Yeah.
But as far as on the streets, I mean, I still see graffiti in Oakland. I'll see Norte tagged, I'll see Sur tagged, or maybe BB's tagged. But as far as are they going at it each other, I'm not too sure, bro, because I'm out of the loop. But I don't see nothing too crazy, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I haven't seen a lot of stuff on the news or anything like that about a lot of brown on brown crime out there. You know what I mean? I've only seen the typical, drug kind of things going on, which is always going to go on. But I haven't seen too much at all about gangs, man.
Yeah, it's been a lot of crime in Oakland, but it's been more like shootings. It seems like they're more like over drugs or turfs, possibly over money, or over just dumbass machismo or something. But as far as like a Norteño killed a border brother or a border brother killed a Sureño, I haven't heard nothing like that.
Yeah, me neither.
So I have one more
But
question.
not to say it's not happening. I don't know.
Yeah, it could happen. So let's take it back to the 80s. I mean, you said you started hearing about North and South in the early 90s, mid 90s. How was it, man? How was it really out there in the streets of Oakland? A lot of people talk about, things in certain cities, it was really cracking, but being in Oakland, I know Oakland, my mother was actually born in East Oakland and my father comes from the west side of Oakland. So knowing that whole
so your dad comes from the old barrio in West Oakland.
Oh, most definitely. So knowing that whole
that's a trip. That's a trip, Gunner. I did not know that.
Hey, that's where I get my flavor from, right? Hey, so knowing this,
so you got roots from Oakland.
Hey, bang bang, right? So getting all this, what was really cracking out there in them 90s when the gang wars was really going at it? I know the BBs, the Norteños, the Surenos, and any other gangs that were involved. Was it really cracking out there? And how was it? That's part one. Part two of the question is, how has it always been as far as the Africano community with the Chicano community? Have they always gotten along? Has there been beef? What's been going on with that?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because my phone went mute for a few seconds. So as far as a lot to cover, bro, but like I said, when I was young in the 80s, I don't remember hearing about Norte. I'm not saying that it wasn't around, but I don't remember an emphasis on it. I remember, like I said, it was 36 locals, 38, Fruit Belt, Gangsters, 15, and what yada yada. And then the first time, I'll tell you the first time I ever heard about Norte. I was riding the number 82 bus, the AC Transit. I was going home from school. I was about 12 or 13. This has to be 89.
Yeah.
And this little youngster came up to me all cholo down. He's like, "Hey, what's up, fool? I'm from 38 local, straight Norte." And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "Are you talking to me?" He's like, "Yeah, 38, bro." I was like, "Hey, bro, my brother's from 36. My brother's TJ from 36. He's like, "Oh, that's your brother?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, okay." Then he left me alone after that. And then I was seeing my brother, and I said, "Hey, bro, I had this weird encounter with this dude on the bus." And he told me that he was from Norte. What's Norte, bro? And he was like, "Oh, that's like prison gang stuff." And then he kind of broke it down to me what it was. That was the first time I'd ever heard about it. Fast forward to a couple of years later, I started hearing about it everywhere. I started hearing about now all of a sudden the older barrios were all of a sudden Norteños now. You know what I mean? And then I started hearing about this new gang called the Border Brothers in the Deep East over there on 94th, 96. Because originally there had been a gang called 96 Locals. And I believe that's where Mexican Mike was from that area. Like 98, 96. But then that area became Border Brothers all of a sudden. And I don't know exactly how that happened. I really want to know that history because I would love to make a video about it because I always found it fascinating how this group called Border Brothers were able to infiltrate in Oakland. And it was on and cracking, bro. After that, around 92, 93, 94, about 95, it was just a fucking war zone between the Norteños and Border Brothers, and even Norteños against other Norteños. It was for a while, red on red for a while. And then it calmed down a lot in the mid 90s. especially when G-Wen and like 17 Reasons started coming out. Bing, da,
Exactly.
but but especially around that time, you started actually seeing norteños joining forces and becoming cool with each other. You start seeing like 15, 38, 36, and all the other hood Fruit Belt gangsters, Mitchell Street, East 7th, all them hoods started being cool with each other. And there wasn't as much drama between norteños, but now you started having Surenos come around Oakland in the late 90s, the SSLs. And I would say during the hyphy era, around the time that they made the documentary Gang Wars, it was fucking pandemonium, bro. It was like a war between Water Brothers, Sud, and Norte over control, and a lot of dudes got killed during that era, bro. A lot
Yeah,
of young
I remember that documentary, man. That was off the hook, man.
Yeah, man. You guys got to check out that documentary, Children of Violence from 1982. That'll show you how Chicanos used to be in Oakland in the 80s.
Hey, so you told me before, man, that you've been involved in a lot of community activism as well, man. You want to touch on that real briefly or what?
Yeah, man. And yeah, because growing up around this environment, see, I never got involved in gangs per se. I was more like, I guess you could say, an affiliate with a lot of norteños because I grew up around hella norteños and my brothers, and I just knew a lot of norteños. Hey, it is what it is, bro. I can't change where I grew up.
Yeah, that's how you grow up, man. That ain't nothing. That's the way. If you would have been in LA, you would have been affiliated with the Surenos, man. Yeah, no doubt.
Exactly. Or if I would have grew up in a Sureno or Border Brother neighborhood in Oakland, I probably would have been affiliated with them.
No
but
doubt.
I grew up in the Fruit Belt area, which used to be predominantly a norteño area. And basically, I started getting more political around 2004, 5. I hated George Bush, bro. I hated that fucking president. So that got me very political. And that's around the time I started reading the Chicano movement stuff. Well, I had been reading it way before that, but I really got deep into it. I started reading about the Black Panthers. This was around the time I started Oakland Latinos United as a if Chicano was doing this back in the days, if Chicanos was doing this back in the 60s, why can't we do stuff like that today? So I started getting involved with different groups in Oakland and in Richmond. I did work with Homies Empowerment, which is Cesar Cruz's organization in East Oakland. I did some work with the Watsonville Brown Berets. I did work with a group called the Richmond Progressive Alliance. And I learned a lot of Clecha about politics. I started actually meeting intelligent Chicanos, intellectuals, which I had never really met too many. And it was kind of beautiful to meet Chicanos that were smart and were thinking outside of just gangs and drugs and the stuff that I had grown up around. And I did a lot of community work. I organized a few protests against police brutality, against immigration raids. And I was part of the Occupy Oakland protests. Those were a trip, bro. Those were a trip. I was part of the Oscar Grant protest. I filmed the Oscar Grant protest on Oakland Latinos United. And yeah, man, I was a community organizer for about 5 years, bro.
What made you What made you walk away from that?
I just had other things I wanted to do. I got into music really big. And political organizing, it was taking up a lot of my time. And hey, I'm still for any movement for the betterment of our raza, but I had to move away from it. And I had other priorities I had to take care of. And I wanted to do music. And I started studying music very hard because I'm a person that studies very hard when I get into something. I get very passionate. And I started learning how to play the drums. I started learning how to sing. I really was infatuated by music from Colombian music, particularly Afro-Colombian music. We call it cumbia, but it's really a whole genre of hella different styles. And I got really intrigued by that. So I ended up going to Colombia and learning how to play this music. And I brought it back to the Bay Area, bro. And I've been playing this kind of music for the last almost 10 years now, bro. And I'm a well-known musician out in Oakland in the East Bay, bro.
So do you have some place where people could check out your music or anything like that?
We do play a lot. Yeah. The group that I'm really playing with right now is called Bahia Natos. It's like Bahia Bay, like Bay Bahia Natos, Natos. You could check us out on IG or on Facebook. We post all our events. We play around Berkeley, Oakland, El Cerrito, Richmond, and then my old group, which is still around, but we're trying to reformat it. It's called Calafia Armada. And if you go to Bandcamp, you could listen to our recorded album. Just go to Bandcamp and type in Calafia Armada, and you'll hear my music on there.
That's pretty cool, man. So we're down to about 8 minutes, man. What you want to say? Anything in closing, man? Anything positive message, man? Anything you want to say, man? What you got on your mind?
Well, I grew up in a rough environment. I moved around a lot. Also, I lived in Sacramento for a time, in Sacra. I lived there for about 3 years. I lived in Richmond. I lived in Vallejo too. Had a lot of homies in Richmond. Met a lot of cool folks in Richmond and Vallejo. And I've been through a lot of negative stuff. When I was growing up, I failed to mention we were really close friends with Fat Tone from Jingletown, who was a big time baller out there, just like Mexican Mike was.
Yeah.
And actually,
yeah,
I heard of Mexican Mike when he was alive. I used to hear about him, but I never got to meet him. But I had heard I heard about his bar, Big C Bar in San Leandro. My brother used to hang out there.
Yeah.
But in closing, all I have to say is I grew up around a lot of negativity. But I always, for whatever reason, I always looked at the positivity of things. Like when people say Oakland is ugly, it's ghetto, I actually tell people, no, Oakland actually is a very beautiful city. You just got to really look at it and you'll see the beauty within. You know what I mean? And I look at things in that way. And I think all I could really say is coming from a struggle in poverty, drugs, gangs, and just hopelessness, bro. It sparked something in me to be better, bro, and to move forward and not get involved in the things that were destroying my community. So if I could really just tell the young raza something is keep doing good things, man. Stay away from drugs, stay away from gangs, stay away from problems. Go to school or learn a trade, open up a business, make some money, learn bonds and stocks, do community organizing, get into music or some kind of hobby, and just think positive, man. Because the world is negative, but there's a lot of beautiful things out there, and we can't be victims all our lives. We just can't. We have to break away from that and just keep it moving forward. And that's how the raza is gonna get forward, man. If we break away from this machismo, these egos, you know what I mean? I'm a norteño, I'm a sureño, I'm a BB, I'm better than you, or I'm so hard, if we break away from that shit and we start respecting, again, what I said early on, respect. As long as we have respect for each other, that's gonna create a beautiful tomorrow, man. And hey, I commend Gunner, Cholo Trucker, Convicts Perspective, and so many others on YouTube that are doing beautiful things to bridge this gap and bring our raza together.
Hell yeah. Gunner, you got anything in closing, man? We got about 5 minutes, brother.
Just, man, we highly appreciate gente like you that have been doing this for so long and paving the way for the younger generation and the raza in a whole to be able to come on this platform, YouTube, and voice our opinions. It always takes someone to break down barriers and kick open those doors. And you're one of the pioneers on YouTube of that. And it's highly appreciated, whether it be prison genre, all these different labels that people put on these different genres. These are just, labels, everyone has their lane. Everyone's going to do what they do, whether it be fighting for the community, glitching these youngsters up so that way they don't make that left when they should have made that right. At the end of the day, I think as a whole for the raza, we've all come together to really basically turn a page to a new day. Show that we're a proud people, but at the same time, we can work well with others to progress in our community, become pillars for the youth and productive members of society. So I appreciate you in touching down with the clecha, giving the clecha to all the gente, the raza, because we need voices for the people, by the people, and we need champions that will champion that. So I just, again, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you for coming on here with us, and man, just continue to do what you do. We're behind you 100%.
Gracias, Gunner. And thank you for doing this boxing event, and hopefully it brings something positive. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys before we finish this. When I first seen prison channels, I didn't like them, bro. I was like, man, it's bad enough we already have bullshit in the streets and gang promotion and some of the OGs promoting prison to our little youngsters. It's bad enough we're gonna have YouTube channels now promoting this shit. But once I really got an open mind and I started seeing channels like your guys' channel, Cool Herc, and other channels, and I see some of the positivity that they were talking, I was like, huh, these guys might be doing more than even some of the Chicano intellectuals to move things, to change things.
Yeah, we're trying to approach that avenue for sure, man. Something's got to give, and if we can help in any form or fashion, man, that's what we're trying to do,
It's always, I was taught it's always good to be real. Just be real. Yeah. And, this is what we know. Hey, can't no one tell you about gangs in prison than guys that lived it themselves,
Exactly.
Yes. And so, where we could give education in whole different ways. If we haven't been there, who are we to really touch on that? So, I mean, we're going to give it to you raw. We're going to give it to you direct, but at the same time, we're going to give you a positive message at the end of it. Hey, we're not trying to scare anyone straight, but you know what I mean? But anyways, we're not trying to have anyone going there straight scared either. We're all raza. So we're trying to look at you guys, trying to teach the people in every way we can, whether to go in there to carry yourself, your conduct. Hopefully you don't go that route, ways to avoid that. But if you do find yourself in them situations, because sometimes it's out of your hands, we are an oppressed people. We are labeled. We are, it just happens. Sometimes you just have too many tattoos and you're just that man on that wrong street. And if you do happen to find yourself in them situations, we're just trying to lace the people up so they don't find themselves in a worse wreck. Because only people that understand that have been a president know that, man, if you ain't laced up a little bit in the game, man, you can come up real short, real fast, So that's basically what we're trying to do, and to network with other channels to just bring positive to the raza and all people in general,
100%.
Yeah.
All right, YouTube, man, it's been a pleasure. Mr. Jose Rivera, Oakland Latinos United, big gunner in the house, man, helping me out with the interview, giving some input. It's your boy Rojo, Convict's Perspective, and we'll probably do this again in a part 2 at some time in the near future. Y'all have a good one.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me on. Thank you, Gunner and Rojo and Flaco. He wasn't here. Thank him too. And hey, I'll keep collaborating. Anything you want to know about history in Oakland, just hit your boy up.
Yes, sir. All right, you guys, we're out of here, man. Have a good rest of your day.